Good morning. My name is Joe Nally. I'm a member of CPI. It's interesting because a lot of us have stories about getting into socialism or communism or getting into radical politics, which is kind of a weird statement because in a society that's very liberal, we're supposed to respect everyone's opinions or political interest. Yet, in a radical time like today, we're seemingly focused on the far left or far right side of the spectrum. And we're now seeing a lot of people today calling them open communist on Twitter. Some people say that they're open fascist or white nationalist to a high, sincere extent. And this has always fascinated me, especially when I was in college 10 years ago. I remember attending my first semester at Temple University in the fall of 2013 as an Asian studies student. I remember I was trying to make friends, and I remember a bunch of kids playing hacky sack, knacking kind of the sack on their knees and hitting it around. And this one kid named, I think it was John, told me to come and play. And he asked where I was from. I said, I'm from suburban Pennsylvania. I decided to go to Temple because my brother was going there. And he said, oh, that's nice and everything, but do you know about socialism? He asked me. And I was like, oh, not really. Isn't that like with Russia or something? And the funny part is they said, well, I'm a member of the Party of Socialism and Liberation, the PSL. Now, for some of you CPI members, you probably know what CPI or what PSL is about from the CPI perspective. But according to 10 years ago, if you are a freshman and you don't know what PSL is about, you would just assume it's the Socialist Party of America. And that was further my interest into it. And I remember they gave me some books. One of those books was, I believe, The Meaning of Marxism by Hayward Books, and other topics like that I remember. And I remember subscribing to their magazine Liberation, and the cause sounded very fascinating. And that's really what got me questioning into socialism. However, over time, and attending some of these PSL meetings, I believe it was every Tuesday night at Temple University, their issues seemed to be more about charity and about helping, poor children in Africa. And it really wasn't about the socialist or Marxist ideals of helping America or creating a planned economy or redistributing money to everyone else. It felt like the money was already made and you were sending out the money to other places. And at that time, as I was reading other books and drifting away, I was being attracted to other politics, mainly far-right politics. And at that time, it felt like with the kind of rise of Gamergate, this kind of video gamer revolt against, the feminists invading the gamer sphere, it really felt like that this message of social justice or this kind of kindergarten daycare politics was really falling apart. And that would make anyone a reactionary or conservative or like a critic of liberalism in a way. And I was being more motivated by what we would know as a far right being critical of a left wing. And so I thought about that. And I realized that what I thought of socialism was more in tune with American liberalism. And that was coming from the PSL at that time. And so it seemed like in these pre-Trump year era, that it felt more that the Trump revolution was right because they were attacking these evil SJWs, and you could say that PSL was creating them. And for some time, I was on the belief that maybe Marxism is a form of American liberalism, and I didn't do my reading, and I kind of just, in a way, socialism back then seemed to be just this teenager club of fitting in, and then I started to realize a lot of that was subversive, and when I went, to graduate school and going back into politics after my bachelor thesis was actually on the alternative right, as I was really into underground politics, I started to actually read Marx and I started to actually look into socialism other than postmodern, stuff that I was being read on a daily basis, especially in higher academia. And it kind of turns out that it really is this ideal of people connecting socialism with feelings. That socialism just means, a happy place, or communism means we can, have a group hug together and everything's going to be okay. And I think it's a compatible left, and that is kind of the breakthrough that I've been learning in the past 4 years of my time in graduate school and in, daily work, where I look back at those 10 years and I don't blame those my generation for joining PSL simply because if socialism means playing hacky sack at undergraduate, having a picnic together, if that's socialism, that's an ideal of the Epicurean society, so you might as well have it. But again, the intentions of PSL and what they're doing. I had a friend who I know since elementary school, and she unfortunately recently joined PSL based upon that, she went to, I believe, I think it's Westchester University, very low tier school, went for 6 years, borrowed a bunch of loan, and she's like $60,000 in debt. And the only thing she can now do is join PSL and cry about it and say, well, we gotta cancel student debt by advocating socialism. And, throw away the Lenin, throw away the Trotsky, socialism means canceling my student debt. And that isn't to say, we know there's a student debt crisis, but it's this kind of very weak message of you're putting your failures of yourself and projecting it through political ideologies. We have people on the internet that, are scared of, immigration or diversity, so they become, white nationalist, or we have people that think they're, communist because they're an extreme form of the SJW idealism. Sincerity should be the most important thing. There's one thing to call yourself a communist, a socialist, a Marxist, and then another thing to role play, or what they call on the internet, LARP, as that identity politic. And I think with the internet, and especially with Twitter, we're seeing a lot more of that in 2023 compared to 10 years ago in 2013. And again, there's nothing wrong with playing hacky sack or picnic. Those are all welcomed things, and all politics should have that as a form of the idealized community. But you have to be sincere with your message, and I believe that is something that most people are throwing away in favor of subculture, where we're just acting upon something. You have to have praxis, and that means reading Marx and reading your books. And that took me a long time to understand, and a lot of what I used to believe, kind of this criticism of liberalism, is only coming back where, again, if you start with the right, you may end up on the left. And who's to say if there's a left-right binary right now? It could all just mean the same, and we're just confused in a weird way. And so, I pity PSL because the intentions is a lot of people are interested in socialism, but the unfortunate part is that it means something else to some kind of middle-class bourgeois ideal of feeling guilty about yourself for being white or something. And I believe in many ideals, that socialism is reaching a sincere point, especially the communist ideal is becoming more mainstream in America. But it's not going to happen through, a fake ideal of it, this fake form of your feelings. It comes with a realization that you must make it sincere, you must be professional about it, and it must come into existence rather than blaming because you can't pay student debt. Student debt will be solved so as long as you have, I believe, an actual praxis that can get things done. And for me, my journey to socialism and anti-capitalism was the realization that it must have praxis to it. And it can't be just an attitude or a mind frame. It can't just be like prayer or I cleanse my sins away because I now think about the good ideal, like being a good Christian or something. You have to project it. And therefore, you can't now call it, socialism is just, envy and jealousy, like they like to say. Socialism can now be something greater. It can be put into practice. It can mean something. Anti-capitalism is the message that can break down the left-right binary and create something of common sense. And I think we're reaching that point. It's just that people would rather play hacky sack and not think about what's really going on. I'm Joe Nally, and I am a member of CPI.